Yeah.
Okay. Kumlanen a block Gemara. We are up to today that Chof Ches on Aleph and Masech Yoma. We can do today's block and tomorrow's block, so we can make a break for a second in between, separate them. We're continuing now to run through the daily activities. The Mamuna, Rashi says, whenever it says Mamuna, it means a Zgan, it means a deputy Kohen Gadol. Others say it means just a balabas. There's a guy who's appointed to, this is his job. But Mamuna told them to go out and see. We recorded this yesterday in the Gemara. Go out and see whether it reached, whether it's ready, the sun is starting to rise, so we can start checking. If it reaches Haraya, the one who sees it, Omer uses says the word bar koi, beginning to light. It's beginning to light up. Masya ben Shmuel, Omer, Masya ben Shmuel says, Hey pnei kolam, not just to say the word bar koi, which means it's beginning to light up, but hey pnei kolam is the entire eastern side of the horizon is lit up all the way up to Hebron. That's how far the sky is already becoming light. Rashi holds that Masya ben Shmuel was actually a Kohen who said that, and according to others, it was a Tana who's telling us Omer what the Mamuna would say. Who Omer Hein?
Because where I live,
we'll see in the tomorrow. Talk about
it facing east, so we can see it. So in the winter, I think it's much more north. The sun rises from the east, but much more to the north rather than the center of the south.
Why Hebron? So Rashi says very nicely, because we want to connect it to Chusabis. So we connect it to Hebron. Okay. Says the Gemara. Who Aimed, and he says Hain. The Gemara will discuss who says Hain, who's asking, who's saying about the sun. Why did it have to go through the whole exercise? It once happened. It once happened that the Moir Lavana were the Chesom Aleph at the bottom of the Mishnah. That the Moir Lavana, the Lavana was very bright. The demon, they thought no, it was the moon was started to rise. And they thought it was the sun. The shachad was a tamid, so they went ahead and shechted the carbon tamid. And then they realized they made a mistake. It was nighttime, it was possible, so they actually had to burn it. Then the Mishnah continued. So that's why they were very careful. But we already explained yesterday about Shnei Gziri Eitz and why they didn't make the declaration, because it could always be remedied. If you turned out to be too early, just remove them, new ones on. But a carbon, once you shechted it, if it's possible, it's possible. The next thing is Haridu Kohen Gadol base at Tefillah. They took the Kohen Gadol and brought him down to the base at Tefillah. Now, even though we learned previously the base at Tefillah was upstairs, but I guess once you go upstairs and you go where the mikveh is, you have to go down to get into the water. So they use the expression Haridu the base at Tefillah. Just like by a chazan, so it was Yoedel Lifnei Teva, because the position where the Amud was always lower. This is the rule that they had in the base of Mikdash. Anybody who covers or squats and covers his leg, in other words, he is going to the bathroom, then Tov and Tefillah requires a full Tefillah. But if all you're doing is urinating, then Tov and Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. You need just to wash your hands and your feet, and so on and so forth. From the Kira. Says the Gemara. Tanya Bishmal says, Barak. When you say the word Barak, you say Bar Koi. Well, there's a little glimmer of light. Abba Kiva says no. All of Bar Koi, which Rashi says is a few minutes later. That not just I saw a little, a glimmer, I saw a bit more than a glimmer. It's rising. The Chuma ben Avkash name it Av Bar Koi. The Chevron, you also say, I see it, but I see it that there's a glimmer in Chevron as well. Masya ben Shmuel, this is the same person in our Mishnah, so obviously he was a Hamamun al Payas. Here we label him as someone who is Mamuna, appointed on the lottery. So that's why Rashi says that that he was a Kohen, but others say even though that he was positioned, but in the Mishnah he was talking as a Tana, not as the person telling us what happened at the time. As we'll soon see. Oymed, he says no, it's not sufficient. Hey pnei kol hamizrach ad shebechevron. Did the whole eastern sky light up all the way to Chevron? And Rabbi Yehuda say, I made hey pnei kol hamizrach ad bechevron, and you add one more line. The yotze kol ha'am ish lemelachto. Did everybody go out to work? We got to work. That's Mamish sunrise. That's far. That's much later. He meant Liska Poile coming in. The employees, they don't get up, they don't rise until it's already light outside. But the employers go out earlier to find new workers every morning, so they go before then. So that's maybe a couple of minutes after the Heyer Mizrach. We're on Chesed base, about 7 lines from the top. Omar Av Safra, 8 lines from the top of the page. So we're talking about here what happened of Chesed base. So we the Mishnah was telling us, the procedure, what happened today, and how they used to make sure that there's time to bring the carbon tumid. So they would ask the guy, someone would climb up to the roof, and they would ask him, so do you see a glimmer of sun there or light and so on? And the question is, how much sort of light do you have to see at the end of the horizon? And according to some, it has to be not just a little glimmer of light, it has to be lit up till Hebron. The sun hasn't come out yet, but it's still, the sky's already lighting up. Omar Ab Safra said, the davening of Avram is when the walls become dark. We're talking about Mincha, which all the Rishonim therefore ask, Avram is Tikkun Shachris, Yitzchak Tikkun Mincha. So some say we weren't particular in which of the others we're talking about. But most say that either that Avram was the one who also made Mincha, but Yitzchak is the one who pushed it, so we gave Yitzchak the credit. Or after Yitzchak came up with Mincha, Avram joined in and started davening it as well. So when the davening of Avram, when he started Mincha, when the sun is overhead and it starts forming a little bit of a shadow. And we had a big machlekes achronim based on the Rashi and Pesachim Nafei and other places. If you remember, and later on as well, is this man mincha? When we talked about that on Pesach, Erev Pesach falls out on a Friday. We want to have as much time as possible, so we bring the carbon tumid as early as possible. When they brought us at 12:30, and the question is why 12:30? Why not 12 o'clock? And we talk about the same Gemara here about the Gzeira because you can't really tell between 11:30 and 12:30 the sun where it is. So there's a big argument. So is the pshat that the halacha really is that mincha starts 12:30 because that's what you can tell. So that's mincha, or the pshat halacha really is mincha 12. But because they couldn't tell the time, so the chacham said let's start 12:30, which means there comes a time where if you have watches and you can tell exactly what time it is, maybe you start mincha earlier, 12 o'clock. Machlekes achreinim there. But you see the signal of the Gemara here. Let's see. So Shafra say the davening of Avram Mincha is mechimash because when the walls start becoming a bit dark. No, there's a little bit of shadow. Anan Avram Nekem Enigma. Anayimai said we're comparing ourselves to Avram. He davened with such enthusiasm the first possible moment. How are we expected to be learning from Avram Avinu? So the interesting question. Amar Rabbi said, what do you mean how? The other things we learn from Avram, Tana, we learn Gamam Avram, but now we don't learn from him. Of course, we learn from Avram. What about the famous thing of Zizim Magdila Mitzvah? The Tanya we learned of the Yom Hashmina Yima B'Sar, and the 8th day you should go ahead and circumcise your son. Melamed Api Halacha Kol Hayom Kosher Milah. You can do it any time of the day. Elisha has Zizim Magdim Mitzvahs. You should try to do it as early as possible. And how do we know that? Shenem, it says Vayashkim Avram Ba'Baiker. Avram woke up in the morning Vayachvish, and he saddled the donkey. So we're learning from Avram Avinu's behavior how we should behave. So we could emulate Avram Avinu. So therefore, mincha also, we should have mincha as early as possible. From when? From the walls start having a shadow. So what's bothering him? And we Ella Marov says Rav Rabbi Yosef Hoka Kashle. This is what bothers Yosef. That now we learned Chol Erev Psachim Arbitrally better Shabbos. The first bit on Friday. Nishchid b'Sheish Machzor we shechted at 12:30. We caught it b'Sheish Machzor, and then we marked it at 1:30. The Nishchid Michri Kaisa. Why don't we do it at 12 o'clock, 12:01? Why wait till 12:30? We're trying to bring it as early as possible. Bring it even earlier. Thinking about my kusha. That's a problem. Is that what's bothering him? I can give a very simple answer. Because the Dilma Koisle Beis HaMikdash, the walls of the Beis HaMikdash, B'Sheish Umachza Mishchid, they don't start becoming dark. You don't start forming a shadow until 12:30. Why is that? The walls of the Beis HaMikdash, if the wall was totally straight, then at 12:01 the sun already is a little bit off center, so you can start seeing a little bit of shadows at the top of the wall. But the way the walls of the Beis HaMikdash were at the bottom very wide, and they narrowed and they tapered off to the top. So therefore, when the sun hit the top, it didn't really form any shadow because the sun hit straight away on the bottom, straight down on the walls as well. So therefore, you didn't see a shadow until 12:30. The sun had to move a little further to cast a shadow on the ground. We don't. Was it?
It looks like this is not actually
It's
correct.
right here. It's not exactly straight walls. Rashi says, let's learn Rashi together. The walls weren't straight. What do you mean? They weren't exactly straight. Well, the Rashi be on the right side. It's on the right side, the Rashi, and it's about 10, 12 lines above before the end of the page. He says, it was wider on the bottom. It's tapering off as it went up. Therefore, the point at the top of the wall, Meitzel does not cast any shadows on the rest of the wall, to darken it. Until the sun goes a bit further into the west. So clearly here from Rashi, you see the walls weren't straight. The problem is, even though, but other walls that people know the time. The point is that people who are standing base Migdash, they see them bringing, they think, it's so early. They think that from now on, this is the time to bring in, and they'll make other mistakes when they have mincha or other things. Another reason that Avram of shiny Avram, we wait till 12:30. We're not such experts. But Avram started at 12:01. Counts me. Avram Avinu started at 12:01, and we asked him, why don't we start 12:01? Because the base immediately the walls are straight. Shiny Avram he knew how to look at the stars and the constellations and the position of the stars and the moon, whatever it is during the day, where the sun was. He can tell exactly what time it was, and therefore he wouldn't make any mistakes. Because he was sitting in yeshiva and he was learning, and it's a continuation really. So he really knew exactly all the laws, and he wouldn't be making any mistakes. I'm not sure exactly why it's an inami sort of a continuation, and therefore he wouldn't make any mistakes.
So why, based on this, had you explained when Rashi explained about Moshe Rabbeinu Chatzos Halayla? That was there.
Not for him, for everybody else. It's the Amcha people. They don't know how to tell time, and they'll think the Eibush was wrong by a minute, 2 minutes. That's what he says. He says it for the people, not for himself.
Yeah, but Rashi explains it because the Eibush knows exactly, but the boss of the Dom doesn't. So I mean, the Moshe didn't know that the rest of the
He doesn't say Moshe knows. So the average person on the street will go ahead and say, "Hey, even though he killed all the B'chayim, you're 2 minutes late," as if they have some truth matters and so on. How does that change anything? It's just that they walk around feeling good with themselves. That the Eibush wasn't 100% accurate, but it's the people. Doesn't anyone Moshe? They never stopped learning yeshiva. It says interesting, it doesn't say about when it says Yehuda to sent Yehuda to Goishna to start a yeshiva, Talmud Torah, or base a Talmud. It doesn't, the Gemara doesn't bring that as a raya that they had yeshivas. Instead, it says, go gather the Zikne Yisrael. And we're looking, counting the word Zikne, because Zakin, we had more Kedushin, so we found, he said Zikne. Why? Zikne is not stam an age on your passport. Zikne is an adjective. A description of your status, of your intelligence, of knowledge. It says, this is nothing to do with us because we're talking about pre-modern data, but still. Avram Avinu Zokin Yeshiva. Avram Avinu sat in the yeshiva. Shneim it says Avram Zokin Baba Yom. Yitzchak Avinu Zokin Yeshiva sat in the yeshiva. Shneim Avayiki Zokin Yitzchak. That Yitzchak got older when he's Zokin, even though he got blinded, but Zokin is a complimentary term. Because Yaakov Zokin Yeshiva. It says the Ein Yisrael Kovdom Zokin. His eyes, again, all of them had issues with their eyes, but Zokin again in teaching means from knowledge. Eliezer Eved Avram Zokin Yeshiva. So to Eliezer Avram, we had those Maradonim. It says Avram said to his servants, they can't base. They called him Zokin as well. That controlled everything that he had. What do you mean Shemoishel? Shemoishel b'Teiras Rabbi. He was a maven. He knew. He was fully cognizant and learned from Avram. Uda Mesek Eliezer. What's that Mesek? Eliezer Shedoyle u'mashke b'Teirasa sheRabbi lachedim. So made up of words that it was doyle and mashke, that he drew water, drew Teira from Avram, and then he disseminated it to other people. Rav says, kind of Avram actually it's a Mishnah in tradition. Avram kept the entire Torah Shenema, as it says, listen to my voice. Of course, Avram Avinu listened to me, and the pasuk then concludes, and he kept my mitzvahs and chukaysai v'torosai. Maybe he's only kept the 7 mitzvahs. He can have a milah, but he didn't keep 7. He had bris milah. So what does the pasuk add? Mitzvah sai v'torosai lamali. Amar Rabbi came to Rashi. What's Takab Shat Torah saying plural? Kaim Avrim Afilu Iyam Edav Tavshilin. He kept even my Edav Tavshilin, even the Rabbanish. Now it says Torah Yisai. Achas Torah Shabbat, Achas Torah Shabbat. According to the gun, it was Ayin Tov, but Ayin Tov is Edav Tchumen, not Edav Tavshilin. There's Tracy Shalom asked, I don't know, and he raised the Tzorchin. I don't know the last line. Lo Yoda Rebbe, Amai Noker Hach Mitzvah. Why this mitzvah? Punkt this mitzvah. Amai Kilo Leit Feimekulu. Say he did even the Rabbanans. Why highlight Edav Tavshilin? The Vilna going changed the Edav Tchumen. The other Rishonim had like Yisra. They don't gain anything. Why Edav Tchumen? In fact, according to Edav Tchumen, one opinion says it's not Torah. So even if it's the Rabbanan, it's a pretty strict one. So I saw a beautiful verse from Avineza years ago, and without going for a whole pulpit because it's a long pulpit. The Nakud of the word is very simple. It's a chiddush by Avraham Avinu Erev Tavshil, and that is as follows. In Svara, why do you need Erev Tavshilin from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Shabbos is holier than Yom Tov. So of course you should be able to prepare from Yom Tov to Shabbos. I need to do an Erev Tavshilin, a heker, and everything else. There's a mile in Yom Tov over Shabbos, and that prevents us from preparing for Yom Tov Shabbos. What's a mile in Yom Tov Shabbos? Because Yom Tov, we made it. And Shabbos comes from the Eibishter. And there's a mile, something that we do over something that it comes foisted upon us from the Eibishter. But by Avraham Avinu, he took Shabbos on himself. He didn't have to keep Shabbos before Matan Torah. So for him, there was no mile in Yom Tov over Shabbos. And as far as Yom Tov is concerned, he took it upon himself, so he took Shabbos. And Shabbos is holy than Yom Tov. So Avraham Avinu didn't need an Erev Tavshil. He could have just gone ahead and cooked from Yom Tov to Shabbos. And even so, because the Chazal say you have to have an Erev Tavshil, he also had an Erev Tavshil. That's that feeling. Says more right. Masya ben Shmuel says, who he says, one person says lit up the sky, one person says hey. Who says what? Manam and hey. Who's saying hey? The guy standing on the roof. He says it's sky lit up. And he says yes. He's talking to himself. Who choli boom if Asher? He dreamt and he's interpreting his own dream. He's the one who said the sky is lit up. Can you hear me over there? You can both hear me?
Yeah, you're clear.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Good. Thank you.
This is, by the way, the first Daf Yomi Shir in Newcastle, New South Wales. So,
don't come back so fast. We need to.
I'm coming tonight to Metz Hashem.
Ella, yeah. The guy standing on the ground is the one who says yes. How does he know? How does the guy in the ground, the guy on the top saying the sky lit up, the guy in the bottom says yes? How does he know? He can't see what's going on over there, over to heaven. So he boys say, more with two answers. Either the guy standing on the ground says yes. So he boys say, but yes means something else, not what you think it means. Or the boys say, the guy standing on the roof is saying yes. So this is how it works. You don't, not what you think it means. He boys say, the guy standing on the roof, the guy on top says yes. The entire eastern horizon is lit up. But the guy standing on the ground and says, it's a question. Not the guy on top says it all in one statement. The guy in the bottom says, Til Chevron, and this is the protocol. This is how they did the process. The guy on top says, yes. That was one way of the conversation. Or you can say, the guy in the bottom says, "Nu did the whole eastern horizon light up?" And the guy on top says, yes, until Chevron. And the guy in the bottom says, hey, it's exactly what I meant to ask. I meant to ask, did it go up to Chevron? So the hein yes is not the guy in the bottom is confirming that you're right, but hein yes confirming that that's exactly what I meant to ask.
This happens every morning.
Every morning. This is the process. Why was this necessary? Could they made a mistake to the moon? I don't understand. Well, how can you make such a mistake? But Tanya, Rebbe says, you cannot compare Timush Shalavana, the way the rays that come from the moon. The Timush Shulchama. How did they make a mistake and see a ray and think that this is the moon, not the sun? Timush Shulchama the Kamakal is very straight, direct, and Timush Shulchama Mafti the Kanakan spreads everywhere. So Rabbi Shmuel, it was a cloudy day. Because of the clouds, it spread everywhere. They thought it was the sun, but actually it was the moon because the clouds caused that to happen. I'm going to pop the Shman of me learn out that of a cloudy day, the entire sky, the entire earth is filled with the sun because the sun tries to break through all the different holes and pockets, and it spreads everywhere, just like the moon during the cloudy day, and that's why they made a mistake. But what do we need to know that for? We need to know when you want to go ahead and spread out out your hides to dry, it can be done anywhere when a cloudy day. And also, and Yinami Likadorish Rabbi Isha and at a Pesach Loy Tolush, you should not need, when you want to be very careful about, when you put a flour and water together when it comes out of Pesach. So you want to be careful, or on Pesach especially, Loy Bechama, not in the sun, but Loy Bechama, not anything heated up, water heated up by the sun. So you need to know that you want to avoid the sun. But if it's a cloudy day, you think that there's no sun there, you should know that there's plenty of sun in the clouds. Amar Nachman, Zuhama de Shimsha, the rays of the sun on a cloudy day, the heat, Kashim Shimsha is even hotter. Well, the humidity but also the sun itself breaks through everywhere. Is hotter than wherever the sun breaks through. It feels a lot warmer when you're standing in those rays, a lot warmer than if it's with no clouds at all, and the sun is diffused everywhere. The semana, just to remember that, dona de chol, like a barrel of vinegar, it contains the strong taste over there or smell. But as soon as you stop poking holes, wherever there's a hole there, it's a very strong aroma that comes out of it. He says at those the sun, the rays that go through all the pockets of the cloud, koshim shimsha is even more difficult than the sun. If you look at the shavriri in your eye, it'll bother your eyes more than if there's no clouds at all and just looking at the sun. The simana dilfa, when it drops down on you, the water is much worse than if you immerse yourself completely in the water. This is the saying you always find in all the Sfarim, but actually here it means something else. In all the Sfarim it says that thinking about doing an Aveda is far worse, in spiritually than actually doing the Aveda, because it affected your mind. It's not just, okay, something happened. Here you're thinking about it all the time, it corrupts your mind. But Rashi says, let's look at Rashi, Hiruri Aveda, Taivas Noshim, having the Hiruri about Taivas Noshim, Koshim Lahakish Atzari, physically impacts you more than the actual deed. It's talking about the impact the gashmis. The simonach and the sign Gemara says is reicha the disra, the aroma of strong meat it makes you even hungrier than when you're eating it. Shil the kite at the end of the summer, kasha mekite even hotter than the summer because it builds up, the ground is hot and everything else, it builds up. The simon of tanudish gira, an oven that has been heated up a number of times, and then you heat it up, it gets hot very quickly. Ishta the sisa, a guy who has fever, somebody who has fever in the winter, kashim is far worse than the summer. The summer everywhere is hot, so you're a little bit hotter. But in the winter everywhere is cold, and yet this fever is able to take a hold in your body and made you so hot. That's much worse. Simon of tanuda kira, cold oven, a cold oven needs a lot more heat to heat it up. Now this is interesting. Migma, everything's interesting, sorry. Migma ba'atikta. If you try to relearn something that you once learned and you totally forgot, is kasha is much harder, much more difficult than chala to learn something brand new. You would think the other way around. If you learn something and you're learning it again, so it sort of comes back to the fore. It says here, no, that if you learned something when and the simon is tina bar tina. If you're making new cement is one thing. Taking old cement and trying to remold it, recast it is much more difficult. I'm not sure exactly the svod is. What's the svod? If you learned something when you were a kid and you learn it again now, it comes back to you. So in L'chayr you think the other way around. Or it doesn't come back to you. So it's like brand new. I have a milah. Every day it means chadosh. I forget what I learned yesterday. Brand new. But what's second? I don't know. What is?
Paying attention to every detail, so it's easier to absorb it. When you thinking, I already know that. So it's a little bit.
So you learn more superficial.
You don't.
I'm eyeing it so much. Okay, good word. So Chaim says. Maybe as well. Okay, we have beautiful shots in there. Very nice. Rebbe was at my time. Rebbe, what's this for? Rebbe, you see, it says lam natsayach ala yelis hashach. It says over there ala yelis, which is a female deer. Hashachar in the morning. What do you mean? How do we know? My time. How do we know that Rebbe said that the sun, it spreads everywhere and so on and so forth, versus the moon that's in a straight column? So he says here, because ma'ayela, just like this, what do they call a female deer? A hind. Zukarneh mefaftilas akalakhan. Her horns spread everywhere. And Rashi Ray says a female deer does not have any horns. That's the difference between a female deer and a stag. Between a hind and a stag is those antlers, and a female deer doesn't. So Rashi says, even though we talk about female deer, we mean deers in general. Lekan, av shachar zeh maftir lekan. So too, shachar, morning, the sun spreads everywhere because we're comparing it to ayelas. In fact, some say the Gemara that Esther is the one who's saying this capital, and she's saying 8K the Kalam of Tani. It's all her when she was going to Achashverosh. So why was Esther compared to this Ayeles? Ma Ayeles, like Ayeles. An Isla, just like Isla, which is the deer, female deer. It has a very narrow entrance cervix. The Chaviva al Baila Kosha. Every time the male deer has relation to the female deer, it's like for the first time. So Kishor Shoina, Af Esther Hoise Chaviva Lachashveda Kosha Kishor Shoina. Loved her every time as much as he loved her the very first time. He set eyes on her, and therefore. And that's nothing to do with the sun or anything else. Amar Abbas is Abbas.
So we discussed
I give a shvach. Why was she called an Ayala? This is the Matthias. She said this. Because she said it. Rashi says it when she came. We'll see in the morning Megillah. When she came to the base of Slumim, to the place where all the idols were, the Shechina left her, and she probably said, "Keli, Lama Zavtani." So the different psukim in that capital are all psukim that she said at different stages of her story, and it starts off a remez alayela because of her, and why yella? Because it's always fresh. In fact, I once heard Rav say, we learned a few days ago that he take the lechem upon him out every yom tov and say, see the chebaschem Hadevish loves you. The challah is always fresh. He's trying to tell all the people came there with their wives because we learned in Chagiga. So he was trying to tell them is relationships have to always be fresh. And even though you have a relationship with me for so many years, it's always fresh. You have to refresh your relationship with your wives and husbands. Why was she compared to a shachar? How could we compare to Ayala? We said why, but why to shachar? What's a shachar here? Just like shachar at the end of the night. Esther Esther was the last of the miracles that were recorded, that was written. Chanukah not a miracle. So when asking the Kana Lakasa that were written, that was recorded as part of the Chavdala Kisva Kedesh. Coming saying, will have a machlekes in the Gemara Megillah whether the Esther is actually one of the Chavdalas for. Hanichel Mandam Esther Lakasa that second was supposed to be, it was meant to be written, and they put matama your hands and everything else. Because could treat as a real sefer. Okay, you're right. It's the last of for him. Mandam Esther later because you couldn't write it. Ma'ikol remember. So then what does Shach have to do? We'll explain like a Biyama Yefes. No, there's one opinion that Esther is not from the Chavdal Kisva Kedesh, and the Rambam finishes off in the Yishalmi there that Kol HaSforim will be bottled except the Chamish Chumsha Torah and Megillus Esther. That's going to continue. But there's one day that says that Esther was pleading. That's why it's called Megillus Esther. She was the one who was pleading, accept this sefer and accept as one of the Sforim. So according to the one that says it was not a sefer, there were miracles Chanukah. Omar, he says, Rabbi Lazar, Omar Rabbi Yami, you know why it's called Shachar? By Yevis, Omar Rabbi Lazar, Loma Nimshut Tfilah, I think Ayelas, why Taka the Tfilah of Tzadikim compared to this hind? Loimlech Ma Ayolazu, Kozman Shemegadeles Karnea Mafsilis, this Ayola, this deer, really a stag, that constantly has the horns growing, has hose growing, yeah. And it makes it look like another ring. Av tzaddikin calls man shemar b'm tefillah nishmaz. The more they daven, they're able to listen to the tefillah. Even though they Moshe Rabbeinu Rablecha, they listen to the tefillah. So that is today's Gemara. Don't leave. Continue.